It's 7 a.m. The kitchen is quiet. The first thing you do, even before breakfast, is turn on the coffee maker. The smell of coffee fills the room. Have it alone. Stomach must be empty now. And that feeling that appears a few minutes later, that little flutter in your chest, that slight acceleration, you've normalized it so much that you don't even notice it anymore. But there's something most men don't know. At that exact moment, as you take that forced sip on an empty stomach, your circulatory system is reacting in a very specific way. And that reaction, repeated every morning for years, leaves a mark on your arteries that science is beginning to document with a precision we didn't have before. Today, with data from the most recent studies, we're going to see exactly what happens to your circulation when you drink coffee on an empty stomach, phase by phase, minute by minute. I'm Carmen Navarro. For over 20 years, I've been researching and sharing scientific men's health to help men make informed decisions about their own body's meds. And if there's one topic where I've seen the most confusion, the most contradictory information, and the most lost men, it's precisely this one: coffee and circulation. Some studies say it protects the heart, others warn against drinking it on an empty stomach. Who's right? What I've seen time and time again is that the right question to ask isn't whether coffee is good or bad. The right question is, what exactly happens to your circulation when you drink it at that specific time on an empty stomach after you're 50? That question didn't have a complete answer until now. Today it does. Before we get into the phases, there's something you need to understand, something that changes everything else. Your circulatory system is not in a quiet sleep mode. When you wake up, it's in what physiologists call active cardiovascular awakening awakening. In the early hours of the morning, your body naturally activates an alert mechanism. The cortisol levels are usually observed between 8 and 9 a.m., which naturally causes a rise in blood pressure. Your heart rate increases. All of this happens before you do anything at all. Imagine that your circulatory system is like the engine of a classic car on a winter morning. It needs a few minutes to warm up and reach its optimum operating temperature. During this warm-up period, the engine is particularly sensitive to external demands. Coffee is a very powerful external demand, and the moment it arrives on an empty stomach or during the natural peak of cortisol determines how that engine responds. Before we get into what happens in the first few minutes, I want to ask you something. Write it in the comments. Do you drink coffee before breakfast or after something to eat? Write 1 if it is before, 2 if it is after. I want to see which is more common among you. I read all the comments. And now, let's start at the beginning. Fernando is 62 years old. He has been opening his shop in Valencia at 8 in the morning for 30 years. His routine is unchangeable. He gets up at 6:30, takes a shower, and the first thing he touches in the kitchen is the coffee maker. 2 black coffees before leaving without eating anything. Fernando has never seen a problem with this. It kickstarts the day, he says, but for the past 2 years, his doctor has told him that his blood pressure is high during morning checks. He's prescribed medication. Fernando takes it, but he doesn't understand where the problem comes from. He eats well. He hasn't smoked since he was 45. He walks every day. It must be his age, he concludes. What Fernando didn't know is what we're going to see now. The moment caffeine enters the bloodstream, something that happens in a matter of minutes on an empty stomach, because there's no gastric content to slow down its absorption, what we could call the double acceleration effect occurs. Caffeine blocks the receptors for adenosine, the molecule that normally slows down neuronal and non-cardiovascular activity, and at the same time stimulates the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. The result is a simultaneous activation of the nervous system that the body hadn't asked for. This happens just when cortisol is at its natural peak in the morning. The body then receives a double warning signal, the one it generates naturally and the one that comes through caffeine. What you feel is an activation that you interpret as energy, but also, in many cases, a slight increase in heart rate, a slight tension in the chest, or that feeling of a more noticeable heartbeat that men have already normalized as part of their morning routine. What you don't feel, but it happens. The blood vessels constrict a slightly blunt. Blood pressure rises so sharply. The review published in GER Science in 2024 confirms that although coffee does not cause chronic hypertension in most cases, short-term spikes in blood pressure are real and measurable easy. And in men over 50 with less arterial elasticity, these spikes have a different impact than they do in a man in his 30s. But this is just the beginning. In the following days, the problem becomes more complicated in a way that very few people know about. Fernando's 6:45 coffee reached his bloodstream in less than 15 minutes, exactly when his natural level cortisol was at its highest. Every morning, without exception, his circulatory system received that double acceleration effect. 30 years of this repeated pattern every day, your endothelium, the delicate layer that covers your arteries, had recorded everything. And when this pattern is repeated for days, weeks, it triggers something that specialists in chronobiology have been documenting for some time. When the hypothalamus detects that there are already high levels of cortisol in the blood, both the natural one and the one stimulated by caffeine, it reduces its own order of production. The body interprets that it is no longer needed. The result in the first days of this repeated pattern is subtle but important. The natural rhythm of cortisol production is modified. The body produces less of it on its own and depends more on the external stimulus of caffeine to maintain the same level of alertness. What the man begins to notice is that if one day he does not have coffee first thing in the morning, he feels especially dull with more intense fatigue than usual. He does not associate it with coffee. He attributes it to age, sleep, or stress. But it is the hormonal rhythm that has been adapting to this external stimulus. Chronobiology researchers suggest that the optimal time to consume coffee, the one that maximizes its effect without interfering with the natural rhythm of cortisol, is between 9:30 and 11:30 in the morning, once the natural peak has begun to decrease. This small shift in time can make a significant difference in the energy quality of the entire day. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition documented that caffeine taken during the cortisol peak does not significantly raise it, but it does prevent its natural decrease, keeping the body in a state of alert that it does not need, and that repeated day after day generates greater dependence on this stimulus. And when this continues for weeks, the story enters a different phase. The information you are receiving is educational and is not a substitute for medical advice. If you have persistent symptoms or diagnosed hypertension, the most responsible thing to do is talk to a health professional, Annie. Circulation is not just a beating heart, it is the health of a network of more than 100,000 of blood vessels. And the main player in that network is the endothelium, the layer of cells that lines the inside of every artery and vein. The endothelium is like the inner lining of a hose. When it's healthy and flexible, the flow is smooth and efficient. When it's under repeated stress from spikes in blood pressure or excess cortisol, it starts to lose its functionality. And in men over 55, this process is especially relevant because the endothelium is already working with fewer physiological reserves. Studies on circadian rhythm and cardiovascular risk published in Nature Communications in 2023, analyzing more than 100,000 adults, documented that early stimulation patterns have a direct impact on the circadian clocks that regulate the cardiovascular system. When those clocks are repeatedly desynchronized, cardiovascular risk increased measurably. This is where many men start to notice symptoms that take them to the doctor. higher morning blood pressure under control, lower exercise tolerance, or the feeling that the heart is working harder than it should in activities that were not previously difficult. Few relate this to coffee consumption on an empty stomach. It is such an automatic habit that it has disappeared from their analysis radar. And when we talk about months and years, the story becomes more serious. The most revealing study in this context was published in the European Heart Journal in 2025 with data from thousands of adults from the HANS nutritional follow-up. The results were clear. Men with a pattern of exclusively morning coffee consumption had a significantly lower risk of cardiovascular mortality than those who consumed it throughout the day without minazole, without chronobiological order. What this study sheds light on is not whether or not to drink coffee, but when and in what context. And the difference that this one makes in the long term is the difference that accumulates in the state of the endothelium, in the regulation of the heart rhythm, and in the ability of the circulatory system to respond efficiently. Men who maintain a long-term fasting coffee habit without food modulate its absorption at the peak of cortisol, more frequently present higher morning blood pressure variability, greater dependence on caffeine to function, and in some cases, symptoms of mild endothelial dysfunction that go unnoticed until they manifest themselves more visibly. But there is real good news, and it is the part I want you to take away with you. The circulatory system has a remarkable capacity for recovery. The Girikira Science Review confirms that coffee remains one of the beverages with the most evidence of long-term cardiovascular protection, with the risk of documented reductions in the risk of type 2 diabetes, liver disease, and certain cardiac events. The problem is not the coffee. It is the timing. Research in cardiovascular chronobiology points to one specific adjustment. Wait, say 60 to 90 minutes after waking before having your first coffee. This simple change allows the natural cortisol peak to reach and begin its decline before the caffeine stimulus arrives, avoiding that double bump and interference with hormonal rhythm. Many men report that by allowing this amount of time to pass before their coffee, they stop feeling the urge to drink it and start to notice a smoother, more sustained activation. Morning blood pressure tends to stabilize in the first few weeks. The body's natural cortisol rhythm recovers more slowly. It takes several weeks for the body to remember that it can then generate morning energy on its own. During this period, there may be days of increased fatigue. This is readaptation, not a worsening. Fernando made the smallest change in his health history. He started eating something before his coffee, like toast or fruit, and moved his first coffee to 9 a.m. when he was at the store. The first few weeks were tough. A 30-year habit doesn't break easily, but at his checkup the following month, his morning blood pressure had moved forward significantly. He hadn't changed his medication or his diet. He had only changed when the coffee reached his body. Let's put everything together. Your circulation instantly experiences a double acceleration effect when you drink coffee on an empty stomach. Two simultaneous stimuli that the cardiovascular system manages, but that from the age of 50 onwards leave a different mark than before. Over the days and weeks, the natural rhythm of cortisol and the dependence on external stimuli change without you noticing, until your blood pressure rises, your energy fluctuates, and the doctor talks about your age without anyone having looked at the time of your first cup. And the reversal does not require giving up coffee. It requires something much simpler, giving your body the time it needs before it arrives. I have a specific proposal for you. For the next 7 days, delay your first coffee at least 60 minutes after you wake up and have it accompanied by at least something small, nothing more. That's it. And come back here in a week to tell me what you noticed. I'll be reading. Imagine what the morning might be like in 7 days. Many men notice that it starts differently, smoother, less rushed, with energy that lasts longer. In 30 days, your morning hormone rhythms start to regain their autonomy. Your blood pressure reading in that morning can start to tell a different story in the back. In 90 days, that tiny change, a 60 minus or 90 minus minute shift on the clock, could be the most impactful habit adjustment to your circulatory health in years, Muhammadan. It's not about giving up coffee. It's about understanding that the body you have at 60 is not the same as the one you had at 30, and that the same habits in the same body, which is no longer the same, produce different same, produce different results. Knowing that is not bad news. It is power. You've spent your life taking care of everyone else. Now it's time to take care of ourselves. Until next time, I'm Carmen Navarro. Stay informed, stay vital. Your best years are not behind you. They can start now. Important note, this video is just for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you have diagnosed hypertension or other cardiovascular problems, always consult your doctor before changing any habits.